Hi, this is John Lauckner. About 2 weeks ago, I had a web chat with folks, and I got a number of questions that I just didn't have time to answer. So I thought I'd follow up with this short video and answer some of the questions I didn't get to. From Fabian, simple question: when was the idea of the Volt born? I'm interested in how long you guys have been working on it. As a matter of fact, we actually started working on the Volt in early 2006. It started with a conversation that Bob Lutz and I had. Bob was interested in doing in his words, a game-changing, remarkable concept car that we could introduce at the Detroit Auto Show in 2007. So we started working on the Volt in 2006, developed the concept in quite some detail during the year. We built the concept car, which we showed in Detroit, and as they say, the rest is history. From Jason, what were some of the reasons for the change from the prototype turbocharged 1.0 liter three-cylinder engine to the production naturally aspirated 1.4 liter four-cylinder gasoline engine? A second question from Jason was, were diesel options considered as well for optimizing running the engine at a constant RPM? Jason, basically, when we originally started the Volt program, we looked at a 1.8 liter four-cylinder engine. And basically, when we got into all of the simulations, we figured out we only needed 53 kilowatts of power to give us the kind of generator output we needed to run the Volt in its charge-sustaining mode when the battery pack's depleted. So we moved to a 1 liter three-cylinder engine, turbocharged, because we knew that would give us 53 kilowatts of power. We later changed it for production to the 1.4 liter simply because turbocharged engines, because you're adding a turbocharger, are hundreds of dollars more expensive than a naturally aspirated engine. It adds a lot of additional plumbing in the motor compartment because of the turbocharger, and that adds a lot of cost. And so basically, for reasons of packaging and cost, we chose the four-cylinder 1.4 liter naturally aspirated engine. We looked at the diesel briefly, but quite frankly, diesel engines by their very nature are much more expensive than gasoline engines. And in the United States, because of the very strict emission requirements around diesels, we have to put small chemistry sets on board to clean up the emissions of a diesel engine so it meets the legislated requirements. We looked at a diesel. Yes, it does add a little bit of thermodynamic efficiency over a gas engine, no doubt about that. But because of the much greater cost involved in the diesel and the fact that we thought that we could run the gas engine at a constant RPM, or in fact several constant RPMs, depending on the load that's required, we chose a gasoline engine. From Ben, what do you think the biggest difference was in the approach and production of the Volt as compared to other new GM vehicles? Ben, it was really the fact that we were developing the technology for the Volt at the same time that we're executing the vehicle program itself. Typically, in most programs we do in General Motors, and I would say that's largely true for most manufacturers around the world, you typically develop the technology in advance and then you apply it to a vehicle program and execute it. In the case of the Volt, to be quick to the market, we basically had to do both of those in parallel. So we're basically developing the technology of the drivetrain. That means the battery pack, the power electronics, and the drive system itself. At the same time, we're executing all of the features and the interior and exterior appearance that gives the Volt its specific look. From Jill, what have you learned from the Volt that will help you with the next generation of electric cars? That's a really good question because, quite frankly, we're going to have probably additional generations of the Volt beyond the one that we're going to introduce in November of 2010. And those will incorporate things that we learn along the way in terms of the ability to reduce cost, the ability to do better engineering, let's say a more sophisticated integration approach for subsequent generations. So there's a lot of learning that's going to take place as we develop the first generation of the Volt that's going to help us as we develop Generation 2 and Generation 3. More generally, we've learned a tremendous amount about the development, the engineering of battery packs. I'm talking now about large-scale battery packs like the Volt, which is probably around 400 pounds in weight. When you look at the weight of the cells, the electronics that monitor the battery pack, and of course the case that the cells fit in, as well as the cooling system. So we've learned quite a bit about that, which we can use in future generations, again, to make the vehicle more capable and lower cost. From Scott, what are your battery supply plans for the second generation Volt? Will you expand your suppliers beyond LG Chem? Scott, you know, we've had an excellent relationship with LG Chem. We did not select LG Chem right out of the chute. Rather, we had a very extensive review of a lot of different cells that were provided by suppliers. So we made a very well-founded decision when we selected LG Chem. We're extremely pleased with how LG Chem has supported the Volt program. And while we haven't nominated a supplier for the second generation, certainly LG Chem, along with other suppliers, will be considered. And finally, from Lev, would it be fair to predict that the Volt is a stepping stone for GM's and the rest of the industry's move to fully electric vehicles? Or is it something that will be greatly expanded and will itself become a standard for years to come? Lev, you know, that question really strikes to the whole idea of the Volt, which, as I mentioned in answering Fabian's question at the very beginning, it's really about changing the paradigm from driving vehicles that use petroleum as their primary source of fuel to basically designing, developing, and producing vehicles that use electricity as their primary form of fuel. And so in that regard, the Volt is a huge step forward for where automobiles have been for the last 100 years or so. And we see a lot of potential for the Volt itself to really set the standard going forward. Whether the Volt evolves into fully battery electric vehicles will depend a lot on the cost and the capability of batteries as we go forward. Because right now, the storage density of the best lithium-ion cell in the world is a fraction of the energy storage that you can get from gasoline or diesel fuel. And so batteries require a lot of space, they add a lot of mass to the car, and they're expensive. To the extent that we can improve batteries going forward to where they're smaller and lighter and less costly, that will allow us, at least in our judgment, to consider more a purely electric vehicle, a pure battery electric vehicle, rather than the concept that we're using now, which is basically a range-extended electric vehicle. We do think, though, that for the foreseeable future, the Volt really represents a sweet spot. It gives you 40 miles of petroleum-free driving and hundreds of miles of driving beyond that using its small gasoline engine to generate electricity. And the so what is that 80% of U.S. drivers drive 40 miles or less on a daily basis. That's 80% of the people with the current level of battery technology in the Volt that we're going to introduce next year that'll be able to drive their daily commute using no petroleum. And that's the big story going forward, is to reduce our dependency on petroleum, because that's the name of the game. That does it for now. Thank you very much, and hope you found the answers interesting.